Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I also don't want to debate how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin. I think you understand where a lot of these questions are coming from. Mr. Geiser, would you ever advise a client to ignore a federal district court opinion?
Welcome back, patriots, to the Constitution Corner, where America's roots guide its future. If you believe in the rule of law, in the power of the Constitution, and in holding unelected bureaucrats accountable to we the people, then hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. Because today's video is a masterclass in what it looks like when a true American patriot, Senator John Kennedy, pulls back the curtain on the nonsense happening in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much, Senator Kennedy. I would advise it.
Thank me. You can thank me by answering it.
I would advise a client on how best to comply with all lawful court orders.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yes, sir.
You would advise a client not to follow a federal district court opinion?
I would advise a client to follow court orders.
Would you ever advise a client not to follow a federal court of appeals decision?
I had the privilege of clerking on 2 federal courts of appeals.
Is that a yes or no?
Yes. I would advise them to follow the orders of courts of appeals.
How about Supreme Court opinion?
Yes, Senator, I would advise them to follow the Supreme Court's orders, as President Trump has been very clear that those orders are to be followed.
Mr. Woodward, let me ask you the same question. Would you ever advise a client not to follow a district court opinion?
No, Senator.
Would you ever advise a client not to abide by an opinion of the Federal Court of Appeals?
No, Senator. Again, it's difficult to answer in the hypothetical, but...
Would you ever advise a client not to follow an opinion by the United States Supreme Court?
No, Senator. As the President has been clear, he will follow all orders of the United States Supreme Court.
Tell me what I would need to do under the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, if I want to change a current rule.
Well, Senator, as a senator, you would pass a law that would change the...
No. I don't want to play games here, Counsel. What would one have to do? What would the head of an agency have to do to overturn a current rule or regulation?
Well, Senator, I apologize. I know that there are many ways to do that, and I don't want to play games either. I want to answer the question.
That's fair.
There are many ways in which an agency can overturn a rule.
Well, you have to give notice, right?
As a general matter, yes, Senator.
Yeah. And you have to invite input, right?
As a general matter, yes, Senator.
Okay. And sometimes you have to hold a hearing, right?
Sometimes you do, Senator.
Yeah. Are there any exceptions to that under the Administrative Procedures Act?
Under the Administrative Procedures Act, I'm not aware of any exceptions, but there are exceptions under the law.
Okay. Are you familiar with the good cause exception to the Administrative Procedures Act?
Senator, I am vaguely familiar with that exception.
Okay. Do you know what it says?
No, Senator, I do not.
I understand. Here's what I'm driving at. Are you familiar with the Supreme Court's case called Loper-Bright?
Senator, I am vaguely familiar with the Supreme Court's decision in Loper-Bright.
The overturned Chevron doctrine, right?
The Chevron deference doctrine, yes, Senator.
Okay. If there is a rule promulgated by a prior administration or even by a current administration that is in clear violation of the United States Supreme Court's pronouncement under Loper-Bright, ruling unconstitutional the Chevron doctrine, would it be possible, strike that, would it be prudent for the Justice Department to exercise authority under the good cause exception to the APA in the public interest and forego the rule, the notice and comment.
So, Senator, thank you. I think I now understand your question. And that is I was alluding to the non-APA process. I mean, if a rule has been promulgated that is plainly unconstitutional, it absolutely would be appropriate for the Department of Justice to look at that rule and make a determination.
My point is, you don't have to ignore the APA to do that, do you?
I would say it depends, but I take your point.
I mean, the APA provides an exception.
Yes, Senator.
It's section 553. It's right there, big as Dallas. Am I done?
Yeah.
I thought that was maybe a mouse or something.
Senator Cool.
Now, you might have caught this exchange already, but we're going to dig deep into what really happened when Senator Kennedy grilled Biden's judicial nominees on something that should be common sense, but apparently isn't anymore: respecting the authority of federal courts. Let me break this down for you. What Senator Kennedy asked was simple. Would you ever advise a client to ignore a federal district court ruling? How about a ruling from the Court of Appeals? Or the Supreme Court? Folks, this shouldn't even be a question. The answer is no. You never advise anyone to ignore the rule of law in a nation built on law and order. But what we saw were two Biden-backed legal elites who danced, dodged, and deflected their way around those questions like they were auditioning for a job in a European bureaucracy, not in the U.S. government. One nominee, Mr. Geyser, couldn't give a straight answer without two qualifiers and a nervous stutter. I would advise compliance with lawful court orders. No, sir. The question wasn't about your opinion of what is lawful. It was whether you follow the court's ruling, period. You don't get to decide which court orders are worthy of compliance based on your ideological leanings. That's the mentality of a rogue regime, not a constitutional republic. Senator Kennedy, in his usual sharp Southern style, wasn't having it. He cut right through the legal word salad and demanded answers. That's exactly what we need in Congress. Leaders who aren't afraid to call out this bureaucratic circus for what it is. Then we got into the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA. Now this is important. This is the law that governs how federal agencies create and repeal regulations. Kennedy asked, what does it take to overturn a rule? And again, the answers were squirmy, vague, and non-committal. These guys want to be in charge of upholding the law, but they can't even explain basic administrative procedures? Let's be honest, they don't want transparency. They don't want accountability. What they want is control. What they want is to be able to bypass Congress, override the courts, and implement woke, globalist nonsense through regulatory backdoors. That's what the left has done for decades through the administrative state, and that's what Kennedy is exposing. He even brought up the Loper-Bright case, which may be the Supreme Court's long overdue nail in the coffin for the Chevron deference doctrine, the idea that courts should defer to federal agencies' interpretation of vague statutes. This doctrine has been abused for years to give unelected pencil pushers more power than the very people you vote into office. What Kennedy is saying, and what we at the Constitution Corner have been saying, is that enough is enough. If a rule is unconstitutional, it should be scrapped. But we need to follow the legal process. No more of this good cause exception being used as a loophole to ram through radical policies. No more of this regulatory tyranny. This is the swamp in action, folks. This is what happens when Washington elites, shielded by Ivy League credentials and DC insider networks, think they're above the law. But as long as patriots like Senator Kennedy are in the Senate, and as long as voices like ours are out here calling it out, we still have a fighting chance. So what can you do? Start by making sure this video gets seen. Share it. Comment below what you think of these nominees' responses. Should they be confirmed? Do they respect the law, or are they just political activists in black robes? And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Because the Constitution Corner is going to keep exposing this insanity as long as it takes to restore constitutional order in this country. We are the Constitution Corner, where Americans' root guides its future. Until next time, stand strong, speak truth, and may God bless the United States of America.